Hello and welcome. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at several major developments here in Illinois and across the country. Illinois, in case you didn't know, just wrapped up its veto session, its fall veto session. And while there were no major moves on cannabis policy at a state level, there were some criminal justice measures that cleared the legislature, and we'll touch on those today. We're also tracking the looming federal ban on hemp-derived cannabis products, a change that could reshape access for millions of consumers and, of course, affect business people. And we might even share a bit about our early experiences with the Cannabis Research Institute and what its creation might mean for research and enforcement in Illinois. Folks, we release this podcast on YouTube, SoundCloud, and all major podcasting platforms. You can also just find it at colememo.com/podcast. I'm Cole Preston, and you can find all of my content at colememo.com. That's colememo.com. And this show is supported by listeners like you. So if you'd like to help keep my coverage going, hit the like button, share this stream with a friend, or you can donate $1 at colememo.com/support. Once again, you can catch the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. Folks, we're going to be talking about veto session updates, the looming federal ban on cannabis products, our early experiences with Cannabis Research Institute, all of that and more right here on
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
All right, and to do that, I am joined by Peter and Doug from the Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. Peter, Doug, I'm going to display your website on screen right now. Doug, do you want to kick things off and introduce yourself? And either one of you can tell our folks about Cannabis Equity Illinois if they're not aware of you guys yet.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Cole, for having us today. My name is Douglas Kelly. I'm Executive Director of Cannabis Equity Illinois Coalition. We're a 501c3 organization that was established back in 2019 when the legalization of cannabis was happening. And then we started the organization, grassroots. Everything we do is based off the community. We are a community-led organization. And so we've been in the thick of things. We do a lot of work on expungement. Our organization cover all the causes. We do a lot of know your rights training in the community and the neighborhoods. We also do some mutual aid. So we do a lot of great work in the community. So glad to be here. We do some policy work as well. And now I turn it over to Peter.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. And thank you, Cole, for having us back on the show. And yeah, like Doug said, we do a lot of work in the community, providing direct services and education in communities most impacted by the war on drugs. But we also, try and make systemic change through policy advocacy. So for, since 2019, we've been down in the Capitol in Springfield trying to change state level policy. Earlier this year, we got more involved here in the city of Chicago on our city budget campaign. And really trying to, use our platform to educate folks about how policy is made and how policy is changed here in the state of Illinois, using cannabis and drug policy as kind of an example of, again, how power is used, how our lawmakers kind of approach different topics. So we're excited to be here today to talk about what happened in the veto session a couple of weeks ago. We wish there would have been more cannabis stuff done, but there were some good things shared. So we're excited to have some updates today.
Yeah, and why don't we dive right into that? Before we dive in, I just want to say for our listeners that the website is cannabisequityil.org. That link will be in the show notes if you'd like to get connected. They're also on social media, which is what we're displaying on screen right now. I think this is a good opportunity to springboard into your legislative update, and maybe to do that, we can display this social media post that you made, which I think is a good graphic representation that'll guide us through that. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Take it away.
So yeah, I think the first one we want to work on is the Clean Slate Record Clearing Bill, which is House Bill 1836. This has been something that Cannabis Equity has supported since this was first introduced. We're proud to be a member of the Clean Slate Coalition here in Illinois. This bill was first introduced at least 4 years ago, and to see, just the persistence of advocates continue to push, drive, advocacy down in Springfield, drive advocacy through the media and telling their stories, through, community events and getting on the doors and talking to folks, in the community. The Clean Slate campaign is definitely a good example of how to win. So we definitely take a lot of inspiration, and we're excited to share that with the passage of HB 1836, individuals who have nonviolent convictions will be able to get automatic record clearing services, helping folks move on with their lives and remove barriers, whether that's to getting a good job, housing, trying to go back to school, trying to get financial aid. There's so many ways that having a criminal record, which more than 2.2 million people in Illinois have, there's so crucial that folks can move on with their lives and clear these records. So we're really excited this passed. And we'll be sharing more information about Clean Slate in our policy meetings that we have on Monday nights, and as well as on social media. Doug, anything you want to add on Clean Slate?
Yeah, like Peter was saying, we are very happy about the passage of this. Since we started organizing, that was one of the first things that came up, that people need to have their records cleared in order to get into the cannabis industry. And we started that process. Our organization has played a huge role into clearing people's record on our own. But this also, with the passage of the automatic, this is something we've been fighting for a while. Wish it could have happened a lot sooner. And just for the people that we have worked with, the process was so cumbersome in the beginning. They went through a lot of trials and tribulations just to do it. And a lot of people had gave up on even trying to get their record expunged because of the way the process. At one point, you had to wait 2 years to even think about getting your record cleared. And that's on top of the time you spent on probation, and then another additional 3 years it took to do it, even start the process. So this was something we have been fighting for since, like Peter said, 4 years, and we happy to see it happen.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's funny. Well, I shouldn't say it's funny, but I mentioned earlier that there wasn't any cannabis policy, and I do think this would potentially affect cannabis consumers, because you can still be charged with you can still get a nonviolent conviction for cannabis possession, for example. So this is great. I think this is good. So that's 1836. Did we have any other thoughts on this one before we move to the next piece of legislation?
Just quickly, you said it. I just want to echo that. Anybody who's in the cannabis community at large, and you think that this bill does not affect you, you might be wrong. So many people have criminal records. We always remind folks, you don't have to have actually been convicted by a judge to have a criminal record. You can get a record just by being, stopped and arrested and booked. And your case gets thrown out. That record still exists. And so when we talk about Clean Slate, a lot of folks think that, only the bad people or only the bad criminals have records. And it literally, again, 2.2 million people. There's 2.7 million people who live in Chicago, and just really want to put that to scale for folks. Like, this is not a small feat. This is a huge thing. And really want to, have this conversation with the platform in the cannabis industry and the cannabis space, the community. This does affect all of us. And again, we're really proud to see this move forward.
Yeah, it's a topic I've been very passionate about, and maybe we'll talk about it later with the CRI stuff. You know how I feel about the continued criminalization of cannabis, and that I just had to give kudos here, because it seems like this is going away towards addressing some of the issues that had remained. So I think one thing we should make clear that's covered on your graphic, but we haven't mentioned yet for our listeners, is that these bills have passed both chambers and are on the governor's desk, right? At least as of today, 11/20/2025, right? Okay.
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure to say that.
Correct. Yeah, we have not. There's not a date to sign that into law, but we are hoping the governor's office will confirm that as soon as possible, so that the advocates who helped pass this can host like a proper celebration.
Awesome. Well, want to jump to the next piece of legislation that passed both chambers. Here we are. It's SB 2730. What thoughts do you have on this, Peter?
Yeah, so Senate Bill 2730. This one is really important, especially in this current time where the federal government has decided to essentially invade Illinois. They have been kidnapping people all over the city of Chicago, all over Cook County, all over the state of Illinois. This is not something that is happening in just one community. This is happening. Horrific stuff is happening all over the state, led by the federal government. And so Illinois and advocates who have been on the ground, in trying to find as many different ways to defend their communities, wrote this Court Access, Safety, and Participation Act, which just seeks to ban civil arrests, including immigration arrests that are made without a warrant, which is illegal. So again, just to remind folks where, you see videos of ICE and Homeland Security jumping out of cars, snatching people and literally kidnapping them without a warrant. That is illegal. That has been multiple judges have ruled that has been illegal for weeks and months now, and it continues to happen. And so this would really just look to try and create these protections, it basically land that the state of Illinois has, including courthouses. Again, this is one of those things that it's really important that this gets done on paper, but we want to be very clear that this is not the end all be all when it comes to community safety. We do encourage everybody to, get involved with their local rapid response networks and do the Know Your Rights training, do the ICE Watch training. You learn as much as you can, because this is, this is continuing to happen. You have folks who are reporting to court to, continue their, to go through the legal immigration process, and they're being kidnapped by the federal government. This is truly horrific and needs to be put an end to this. In Illinois, this is just one small way where Illinois is trying to find some solution.
Doug, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of people think it's just happening in certain neighborhoods, but no, it's happening all over. It was in Evanston. It's in a lot of other communities as well. So this affects everybody. So you never know when you can be pulled and snapped. So this is something very positive that we need to get done. And it's affecting all communities. Your family member. I drive Uber and Lyft sometimes, right? So I had a guy get in my car, and he was African American, but he lived in a Hispanic neighborhood. He was just cutting his grass, right? And the van did a drive-by, came back around and hopped out on him. He was like, "Man, hey, wait a minute. You know what I mean? I'm just cutting my grass." So it can happen to anyone. So everybody needs to be aware. And when you see something, say something, because it's going to continue to happen.
Yeah,
absolutely. And similar to Clean Slate, I just got to make the point in case it wasn't clear. If you think this, I'm just a regular cannabis consumer, this doesn't affect me. Unfortunately, it does. And everything Doug said is real. And we always just remind folks, cannabis is still illegal at the federal level. They are using people smoking weed, people with wraps or papers on them, people with paraphernalia. They are using that as justification to arrest people, to kidnap people, to disappear people. And so again, this is something that is unfortunately increasingly happening. And we just need folks to be talking about this. This is not something we can be quiet about. It's happening every day.
Thank you for covering this and keeping us in the loop on what's going on with legislation at a state level with regard to that subject. Any other thoughts before we move on to the transportation funding, which I know is a big one that affects a lot of people? We're going to move to that. So yeah, the transportation funding, SB 2111. Peter, what thoughts do you have on this?
Yeah, this one, definitely, I'll say in a much lighter note, this one's definitely very exciting. And you might have heard that, the transit system in across the state of Illinois, but especially in Northeast Illinois, where you have the Chicago Transit Authority, the Metro, the PACE buses, they were facing a significant budget deficit. A lot of the money we used from the federal government was running out. And so we had to come up with a lot of money. And in a very short period of time, we were talking about, these agencies not having, enough money starting next summer. And so it was crucial that the state of Illinois passed some legislation to get them some money. One thing we always remind folks, because one thing that you see a lot in Springfield, you see a lot in our media, there's this kind of Chicago versus everybody, everybody versus Chicago kind of vibe and messaging. And, we flat out reject this. And one thing that we saw a lot in Springfield is lawmakers saying, well, this is just, Chicago, they want they don't want to pay for their train. So they're asking us to cough up some money. We always remind folks that Chicago, in terms of major city transit agencies that receive state funding, the Chicago Transit Authority gets the lowest amongst major cities. So we talk about New York, or Philadelphia or Los Angeles. They're getting a ton of money from their state governments, whereas the city of Chicago is basically funding the CTA almost on our own, which is not sustainable. And the other piece we always remind folks is that if the larger Northeast transit system or public transit goes down in any community, that just absolutely devastates everybody. Folks can't get to work. Folks can't get to get their kids to school, get kids to daycare, go to the doctor. And so again, this is one of those things that it's like, oh, well, it doesn't affect me. I don't take the bus or I don't take the train. This is something that, it's crucial that folks can get around, whether that's you or somebody, it's really, really critical. And so, we're very excited about this. Again, we remind folks that there's money in this, both for Northeast Illinois, but there's also money going to agencies across the state. So this is not just, again, we're not just there's not a bailout of Chicago. This is about trying to get everybody to have, accessible transit, everybody to be able to get moving around their community so that they can, live their lives. So we're definitely excited about this.
Yeah. And I think everybody got to understand, a lot of people have cars, but a lot of people don't. And this improves the transportation moving forward. Hundreds of thousands of people take public transportation a day. And we cannot let this system fail. You see kids getting on the bus, going to school, work, doctor's appointments. All this stuff is the way the city moved, but also the suburbs. It's just not the city of Chicago who was looking for this funding. It was everybody that moves in Illinois. So glad to see we came up with some funding, but more is going to be needed. Like, we got old buses and trains and things of that nature that some point needs to be replaced. So we have to continue this fight beyond this point. A few years from now, we're going to be looking at the same thing again. So we just got to be prepared. It's funny how policy works and moves, but we have to understand a lot of this stuff is going to continue. So we need to have plans that's already looking forward on how we're going to fund these things and things of that nature. We can't wait till the disaster is about to happen to start looking for money. Like, this should have been planned out a long time ago. But that's kind of like how Illinois operates. They kind of kick stuff down the road and don't want to be the person caught with it. We need to change how we operate legislatively at every single level. County, state, all of it, city. There's a lot of things we can improve on at the city as well.
Anything to add there, Peter, before we segue to the next bill?
No, I think just want to echo what Doug said and name that, again, we want to be clear. It's a lot of money that comes through this legislation, but it also is governance reform, which we in the cannabis community have been begging for years. What this legislation would do is it would create a new Northeast transit agency so that everybody's under one roof, everybody's working together, having conversations together, coordinating services and making sure we're delivering accessible, effective, services to the public. And, in the case of, cannabis in Illinois, we still don't have, a true regulatory agency or commission that runs cannabis and has that decisive power and control. And so, we're excited that it's not just we're helping the system pay its bills, but, we're making sure that folks who are qualified, who actually want these systems to work are in positions of power.
And this last bill, 1784, Senate Bill 1784.
Yeah, so this one is another really exciting piece, kind of switching back to more kind of criminal justice reform. This is a kind of, I would say, another step in, Illinois trying to be a more fair and more just place, especially for young people. You may know or may not know that a couple years ago, Illinois became the first state in the country to make it illegal for the police to lie to children, people under 18. When they were in custody or being questioned. The first state in the country, and I could be wrong, but I believe that's still the case. And so we talk about, justice for young people. Moving that a couple years ago was huge. And so this bill, Senate Bill 1784, is kind of another step in that pathway of really trying to deliver justice to our young people. And so it's raising the minimum age for juvenile detention from 10 to 13. Just to explain what that means is you could be 11 years old and they say, oh, you got into a fight at school. The principal is siding with, they're saying, oh, actually you assaulted them. They're really charging children with serious penalties, mandatory minimums in some cases. And making these children serve time, which is just unbelievably inhumane, but also completely counterintuitive. That detention, that time served incarcerated, that is not rehabilitating young people. That is not making anybody's lives better. That's not actually repairing harm. And so this bill is just another step in trying to move away from just locking kids up as early as we can. It moves away. It would really try and incentivize young people to focus on like diversion and community alternatives rather than prison time. And so again, this one is really kind of in the weeds of the legal system and trying to repair a really messed up situation, but it's really one step in the right direction. So we're really kudos to all the advocates who, again, we're talking about working for years to try and get, some folks might say this is small, but like this is really significant stuff that is not easy to pass.
Yeah. So definite kudos there. And I just want to reiterate something you all said earlier. You can join the policy working group. There's a link, bit.ly/CEIC policy. I'll have that in the show notes. You can also just go to cannabisequityil.org, I believe, and sign up for the policy meetings there. Okay, well, like I said, again, and as you said, that's great progress. It is frustrating, though, I'm sure, to still not see any progress sort of specifically on cannabis policy. Right. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, maybe they can't use hemp as a cause not to do anything now. Maybe we should be able to get something done. So this year coming up will be the test. Like you can't say it's hemp now. Like so now
well,
what are we gonna do?
For background, what you're saying, in case folks don't know, is you as advocates, I'm sure, and you're not alone, I'm sure other people have been, am I understanding correctly that you've been told as advocates that like we're not seeing cannabis policy move forward because of hemp? Yeah.
2.5 years now, this is what we've been hearing. Like, oh, it got stopped because we can't come to an agreement on hemp. So a lot of great things have been stalled. For the last 2.5 years, we have had over 21 items agreed upon to move forward in the cannabis industry that would have helped the social equity applicants, that would have just helped the medical patients, would have helped people with jobs and everything else, but continue use hemp as a way to not do anything. And it's very sad. For a lot of people who don't know, this whole process started with medical patients. And now medical patients are being left totally behind. They don't have dedicated lines anymore. They can't get the medicine they need. They only tied to 55 original multi-state operators location, when there are places they can go that's 10, 15 minutes from their house, but they can't go. That was in the bill. So there are a lot of things that would have been cleaned up, cleared up, would have helped the transporter, would have helped the infusers. That happened. Like, so many things could have happened, but because they kept using hemp as the excuse not to pass this legislation. So I'm looking forward to really getting back to work on this. And with that being taken off the table now, let's see how far we get.
Do you have any thoughts to add, Peter?
No, Doug is exactly right. We for years we've had everything agreed. We brought every advocate, every stakeholder to the table who had a voice, and everybody agreed these are the things that we can all move forward with. And they continue to say, well, we don't have the votes on hemp, so we're not going to let you get this cannabis stuff because they're not going to let us get what we want on hemp. And we've unfortunately learned the hard way of how business is done in Springfield. If leadership doesn't fully get their way, that things like this can happen where your whole issue gets tied up for years. And specifically just for folks who want to Google from home, Senate Bill 90, that is the vehicle that has all the items that Doug mentioned. That's where everything is at. It's just sitting there waiting to be voted on. And so if folks are curious about what's in there, again, that's Senate Bill 90. And we look forward to finally getting that over the line this year. Amongst so many other things, this is so past due.
I'm not sure if I just displayed the correct legislation on screen, but folks, Google Senate Bill 90, and I'll try to have the correct link in the description if you want to check it out.
I believe it's Senate Amendment 1. That's why it looks it's a shell bill. That's why it looks like that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll figure that out. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting state of affairs. So what you are referring to, in case our listeners don't know, at a federal level, there's a lot of talk that like within the next 358 or 356, somewhere around there, today's November 20th, this hemp ban at a federal level is going to take effect, barring any amendments or legislation that gains traction. That sounds like what's going to become the law of the land. And so some of these products that you've been able to purchase at your local Benny's or the salt shed, you name it, there are small operators and there are big people from the cannabis industry that are participating. And basically this federal framework that's been rolled out as a result of the 2018 Farm Bill is going to be rolled back. And a lot of the products that I was referencing, like cannabis drinks that you could get at your Benny's, will no longer be allowed, again, barring any other legislation that could come out between now and then. So I just wanted to give the background on that because we don't have to deal with that at a state level anymore. Many people are arguing that what's happening at a federal level is effectively a ban. So state's kind of like problem solved. We don't got to worry about that anymore. And the hope is that you guys can have some substantive conversations about cannabis reform at this point, right? Because it's been 5 years and I think a piece or two of legislation has passed, a piece or two.
A few small things that passed around, especially basically early on, House Bill 1443, back in 2021. We're talking about things that effectively changed like the lottery process when we first got into this mess. But anything of substance since then has really not made it through.
It has been stalled ever since, and we really do need to make some changes. We need a governing body over cannabis. Just having 13 different organizations all got their hand in the pot, and nobody's communicating with each other continues to plague a lot of the things. This department doesn't know what the next department is doing. And they all got their own set of rules and how they govern. So There are a lot of things in that bill, but on the hemp side too, this is what I had been waiting for. I was like, we just need to wait for the feds to do what they're gonna do, and then that'll silence all the noise. So there's no reason that we can't get some good policy passed for cannabis now that that's out of the way. But it's unfortunate for a lot of people because the way the cannabis industry is structured, this is what they wanted anyway. So they'll be able to control the whole market now. As you can see, some of the cannabis operators have already moved into the hemp space. So they wanted it all for themselves. So this is why they push so hard for it. But you got to also look at alcohol with the drinks and everything. Their sales have went down since the hemp products came out. So pharmaceutical companies, a lot of people are getting off all the heavy meds because they can use these products. So you got three of the biggest industries in the world want to see this gone. Not to help you, but for their own greed to cover their pockets. Like, it's time we start exposing like all the things that's behind the scenes that regular people just don't see if you're not in the weeds. This is not about really safety or anything. This is about control, like everything else. Like if they can't control it, well, it can't exist. But a lot of people use those gummies to go to sleep from insomnia and for pain management and a lot of those things. But if they can't control it, we can't have it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Peter, just to give you space?
No, Doug said it. Doug said it right. We just always encourage folks, look up the campaign donations, look up the money that is flowing here. Always follow the money, and you will find the truth. You will find the root of these issues. Specifically in this case, look at the money Mitch McConnell gave. We're talking about like $1 million from the alcohol industries over the recent past. That's not just for goodwill. That is, this is bribery. This is corruption. Like we should be able to call this what this is. And we really just encourage folks that whether it's, we see it very clearly here in cannabis and with this hemp conversation. But this is how the government is working on all things. You wonder why your utility bill is going up. You're wondering why food prices are going up. These corporations have unbelievable influence. They are the influence. They are telling lawmakers what to do at every level of our government. And again, we need people to see this. We need people to call this out for what it is, and to push for a system that
all these organizations put away millions of dollars to lobby our politicians to do things that for them and not us. They don't care about any of us. They don't care that the food prices are high. Only thing they care about is their bottom line, greed, the root of all evil. And that's what this is. Every major industry is full of greed and corruption. And our lawmakers are complicit.
Yeah, it's like I say, I just look at it as I understand some people. I'll keep my thoughts brief, and we can maybe close with just a conversation about Cannabis Research Institute. I've got one other small topic about cannabis advocacy, but I really think this is unfortunate. And I think you guys nailed it. So that's why I'm going to keep my comments brief. This wasn't really about safety. This was about control. And what really sucks is that in this case, it feels like it came, and of course this is the case. It was control that came at the expense of our freedoms. Right. And I just really liked being able to get I got more than a few times a 24 pack of these drinks shipped to my door when I premiered my mini doc. Oh, Doug, you were there. And I gave so many drinks away. And the reason I was able to do that is because it wasn't under the state framework that criminalizes that activity still, by the way. Brought in a cooler full of drinks. If I would have tried to do that at the dispensary, first of all, I would have ran into my possession limit, purchase limit, I mean to say, and then possession limit, of course. but you can only gift out so much. It's just complicated. So yeah, like just small things like that, being able to get it shipped to your door, being able to get as much as you want, have as much as you want, give away as much as you want. Like that's when I was like, yeah, this feels like more legal. You know, like this feels normal, like beer and everything else we have that's legal. So like I say, I hope that we can at least remember some of those good things. I hope that, like, maybe I'm being too optimistic here, but if people see the drink section in Benny's disappear, that they're going to be like, what the heck? I liked that. How do we make that happen again? And then we get some support. Maybe I'm being too optimistic here, but I do think sometimes, you know, people don't know a good thing until it's gone. And so that's why I bring that up. Because again, I know there were conversations about like improving the framework, you know, making sure that there weren't pesticides and synthetics or whatever. And it's like, yeah, of course we should add more full panel testing. But again, as Doug made the point, that's not really what this debate was about. It was all about control. So,
because all those things were being done. There was regulation being put forward that would have eliminated a lot of those things.
right.
It was strictly about control. Everybody understood that it needed to be regulated. But the sticking point is, like, they didn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? They didn't do it the sensible way, you know. Unfortunately, a lot of our lawmakers don't read. They don't do research. They never understood what the fight was about. They listen to the one-pagers they get. And that's how they make their judgment. They didn't take the time to get an understanding of what the hemp plant, the difference between hemp and cannabis was, or even what the effects is going to be. Like how many small businesses they're going to put out of place. All these companies that catered that because they couldn't get into the cannabis industry because of the limited license. They created this monster. And do they really think where they think these products are going to go now? They're going to the black market. So we just created another problem, which now they'll be able to use to arrest us again. It's all, the dots all connect. Like, we just got to understand and look at the whole picture. This is about a much bigger need than just what that was.
Right. Well said. And I think we said it the other night, and then we can move on. But I just wanted to add this. And Peter, if you have something to add as well, I'm not trying to cut this off. But like you said, all the concerns that were aired in the media and by certain people that you know, by certain people, you know, whether it's the governor or others, about, you know, concerns about children, concerns about what's in the product. You don't address that with a prohibition. You don't address that with a ban. Like, you know, as a kid, it was easier for me oftentimes to buy things that were prohibited, quote unquote, and it was harder for me to get like a beer. Like, don't get me wrong, I could, but it was more work to get somebody that had an ID, like when there was a legal process. And, you know, anyways, I just think that we have to be careful with what we wish for here. And that's like the bad side of prohibition, because we don't solve any of those issues if you truly were concerned about some of those things. But anyways,
yeah,
this did not make us any safer.
Right.
Absolutely. And I would just express, you know, as part of these last couple of years where, you know, our coalition has been very clear that we support, you know, an independent, regulated hemp industry. It's been very unfortunate to see a lot of advocates, a lot of business owners, a lot of different stakeholders, you know, clamor for this ban on hemp under the guise that this was going to help their business, when, you know, all the reasons we just mentioned. This helps, you know, the 0.1% of people. This helps, you know, these major corporations that do not care about our well-being. And so we talk about prohibition does not work. It has never worked. And it, you know, just been incredibly disappointing to see a lot of advocates buy back into, oh, well, if we do prohibition, you know, my business will stand up. And like, man, it's a lot bigger than that. And you have to be very careful for what you wish for. Because again, this is this doesn't end well. Like Doug just said, this is not just about the money side of this. This is about criminalization. These products will come back to the street. These products will then be used as probable cause for police to stop people. And the cycle will continue. And so we have to be very, very careful. And prohibition of any kind is not a winning solution. It doesn't keep anybody safe. It doesn't serve us. And we have to flat out reject that when we see it.
Yeah. Well, here's my last thought, and we can maybe close with CRI. I'm curious. I just want to get your thoughts on this, because this is something I've always wanted to talk to people about, and I've talked to people about, but I've never, like, I think I've kind of mentioned it on the show, but I don't know if we've ever talked about it. So, like, the way things work in Springfield, like, a few times I've been invited to meetings, and I haven't been invited since. But it's nothing that I said. I guess just people didn't want me there. There's there'll be a few of the regulators in the room, a few lawmakers in the room, a few lobbyists in the room. And occasionally I think I've even seen you guys in the room. And I just can you just tell us how that process works? Because I'm just so intrigued. I was able to be a fly on the wall one time, and I'm just it seems like I was kind of questioning, why is this secretive? It doesn't seem like it's that controversial. I was like, this would be great if it was streamed to the public so that people had an insight into how the sausage is made. And I get the concept of too many cooks in the kitchen, and I get the impression that that's the concern. But can you I'm just curious, tell us, how does that work, and what are your thoughts on how it works?
I want to start with 2019, then I want to pass it to Doug, because one of the things we learned very early, again, spring of 2019, the writing was on the wall that they were going to legalize. There was an AstroTurf organization called Legalize Illinois that the big MSOs funded to make it look like there was this big push to legalize. And one thing we learned very quickly when we brought more than 100 people down to the Capitol to advocate for real cannabis justice and real equity, was that the way business worked was not inclusive of any of our members. I quite literally remember being told that I needed to talk to a different advocate, and going down to, at that time, I believe it was one of the representatives from Peoria, and we open this conference room door, and you see, the major MSO CEOs, the lobbyists representing those MSOs, the major labor leaders, some of these really, really large labor unions. And we were not welcome. We literally opened that door, and they were like, we're closing that door. You guys should not be here. And it was very clear at that time, this is a conversation for us to have, and not you all. And so we learned very early that, most of these conversations were never for us to be able to be a part of. Especially the legalization conversation, when they were setting the foundation for what we have today. I think we all probably would have shouted down a lot of these ideas that, we should give the MSOs a +1 dispensary, or we should let them, be the only ones to serve medical patients. We know they would never let us share those opinions, especially such an early process. So I wanted to make sure I shared that first, just because, again, this goes back to the bill being drafted. We were never supposed to be in those rooms. I'll pass it to Doug.
All right, I'm going to be a little bit more blunt, all right? So first of all, the reason they don't want regular people in those meetings and behind the doors, because they don't want to see how it's being done. And most of our bills are written by the companies that want to push their agendas. So the big companies, they write their own bills and give it to the lawmakers to run for them. It's not to benefit the public, because they don't run these stuff by the public. It's a few people make all the decisions. Let's be honest about the way politics is now. You know what I mean? It is not meant, and then you get people like us who are disruptors, right? We came in like, nah, this ain't right. You know what I mean? It takes a long time for you to get in those rooms. Like the first 2 years down there, we were in the spin cycle. All they did was spin us. go talk to this person, go talk to this person. They was laughing at us. They ran us around Springfield for 2 years before we was like, okay, it got to be a better way to do this than this. It's about building trust, to get enough people to trust you to invite you into rooms. To me, it's like the mafia, the good old boys, right? You gotta work your way up that ladder to get in those rooms. And every now and then they have to let some people in that they didn't want to let in, just because you made enough noise to get in. But at the end of the day, I really wish our lawmakers did their jobs, took their job serious. We put these people in office thinking we can trust. Our trust is being violated at an alarming rate right now. These decisions are not being made based off what we think. The decisions are being made off who put the bill forward.
Yeah, and Peter just reminded me, dropped in the chat, that this might be a good time to plug the book that I'm displaying on screen right now, which is called The House That Madigan Built, The Record Run of Illinois Velvet Hammer. It's by Ray Long. And actually, if you go to colememo.com and search up Ray Long, Ray came on to the show to talk about his book, The House That Madigan Built. He also came on to talk about stalled ethics reform efforts. That was back in May of this year. There was some talk, and some reporting by the Chicago Tribune about the ongoing ethics crisis in Illinois. And that's a whole other thing. We could keep going on and on, but yeah, I appreciate you guys giving that background and stuff, because I had always wondered how it worked, and I think it's really insightful and like back in the day. And so what does it work like today? Because like I said, I went to one, and it was like really mundane. They were just talking about the different policies. I remember there was discussion about medical at all dispensaries. Representative Morgan specifically spoke to why it was an important issue and why it was an issue. He explained the differences in the laws and what caused this issue. And it was stuff that I thought was very interesting, and how it would have helped his image to be as vocal as he was publicly. And maybe he is, and I'm just missing it. But I guess what I'm saying is, what's it like in those meetings? Because he spoke and then lobbyists spoke. Is that typically how it goes, where it's I object to that because of this? Or
yeah, this is and it's kind of important to contextualize when these conversations are happening, because just to be very clear,
sure,
this conversation didn't happen a couple weeks ago during the veto session. We
right.
We weren't all in a room talking about this, and we weren't, to be totally honest, we weren't having most of these conversations much of this spring. There was a couple one-off conversations where we were having spaces. Last year, a couple years ago, we did have, we actually had regular working meetings when, Doug mentioned that list of all the articles that we went one by one. We literally had a call bright and early every Friday morning at 8:00 to go one by one through those. Just to be transparent, those conversations are not regular things. Those have stalled for a number of reasons, kind of behind the scenes. But in our experience, it's always been a mix. One thing it will always be very clear is Doug and I are typically the only people in the room who do not have a financial interest at stake. You will walk in and you will see the lobbyist who's getting the check from the MSOs, the staffer and the lawmakers, lobbyists who represent, God knows what other companies. Again, we mentioned alcohol, tobacco, pharmaceuticals. They all want a piece of this. And so you're going to see more and more of those people start to show up. And yeah, you can almost always guess that it's going to be the two of us in there being the only ones being what about the patients? What about impacted communities? What about, the principles that our lawmakers set out for in 2019? What happened to all that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then at the end, what happens is what happened with us on a continued basis. One or some of all the multi-state operators will lobby against all the hard work we did during that time. So we spent months, even years, of negotiating all this stuff out. And then the final day when it's time to vote, nothing happens. And being in the rooms, right? You get the sense that we had made some progress, right? Everybody was smiling, laughing. You got to understand, like, these people can be in the chamber arguing at each other. 20 minutes later, they're having lunch together. Like, make it make sense. Like, I'm going to say this. I think everybody should spend time in Springfield just to see how the sausage is made.
Yep.
And then form your own opinion. When I left, I was appalled. I was like, man, what the? I understand why things are now more than ever by being in Springfield.
That's a good way.
It has lit a fire under me that I never had before. And I think if everybody just took some time and just sit back and watch and listen, go in the chambers when they're voting, go into the committees while they're doing the committee hearings, and just listen and watch. That'll tell you everything you need to know about politics.
And we really encourage folks, if you're going to come down to the Capitol, come down to Springfield, please, like, come down with us. We will show you around. We will tell you who is who. We will explain how, the context, because you're going to be in there and it's designed to be mundane. It's designed for you to fall asleep. There's nowhere for you to sit. There's no drinking fountains. There's no, it's as uncomfortable as humanly possible so that you do not participate. And so it is really important that when you do go down to the Capitol, see it for yourself, but also, if you can, join with advocates like us, because again, we will tell you the truth. We will point out which lobbyist is which, and just get, again, it will all make sense very quickly. Why is my electricity bill keep going up? Why is there no access to healthcare? Well, that's the Blue Cross Blue Shield lobbyists right here. This is the lobbyists.
Yeah, this is ComEd right here. There's their lobbyists.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and
those people live there.
And they're making a lot of money. But we brought up the book too, the house that Madigan built, because it's also just really important that folks understand, like, this is, we're talking about this, one individual person had, they held the power for 5 decades. We have so much, harm to repair. When we talk about, like, the systems, like how things actually get done, this dude was the one shaping this. This was the dude who really gave us a, dealt us a really shitty hand. He's the one who wasn't paying, our pension bills. He's the one who made sure our credit was in the dirt. He's the reason that People's Gas and ComEd have a monopoly here in Illinois. And so, it's really important. Like, we cannot separate anything that is happening now from what this guy built, what this guy created. And so just be very clear. A very important book for you to read. Get it at your library. Support local journalism.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, any other thoughts on that before we close with CRI? Thanks for your time today, guys.
Always a pleasure.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I will just say briefly, I went down to Springfield once and you guys helped me out. Like, I just was able to take the time. It is hard to get down to Springfield. I understand that, folks, depending on where you are. It's a big state, but if you're able to go, like they said, go to cannabisequityil.org and get in touch before you go. Make sure they'll be there. They can potentially meet you and, help you out. But I went there once and was going to participate in a hearing, and it's crazy. Like, I had to go out of my way to take the time to get down there. It's not a short drive for me. I went, and I even went to a local dispensary and purchased a product to sort of, show that that it wasn't odor proof. It was a specific piece of legislation we were discussing at the time. The point is, I did all that effort, spent money and all that stuff. And I went there and I saw you there, Doug, and they canceled the hearing. There was some other guy that drove 5 hours that day. He heard about it through me and you guys blasting it out on social media. He took off. He drove from like Northern Illinois, drove 5 hours, and it canceled, and he just had to leave the hearing. And it's like, that's what you meant earlier, I think, Doug, when you were saying like sometimes it just is frustrating and it feels like the process is meant to make it. And Peter, you said this too. The process is meant to make it hard to participate. You know, it feels that way. I think.
Yeah, they will post like, we're going to be here till Friday, right? You spend your money on hotel travel and get there. They go home Thursday.
Yeah.
Yep. Our lobby day
with no regard. Like, we cancel all meetings for Friday. See you next week.
For folks who came to
you pay for a hotel room and your train ticket or however you got there, and then for the one thing you came down there for, got canceled. You came down there for one thing, Cole. That thing got canceled.
Exactly. Peter, were you gonna mention something? You're muted.
No, Doug said it. This is literally by design. You will spend all this money. You'll get everything ready. The committee is scheduled for 2:00, and either they cancel it or the committee, it's 6 hours delayed. So all of a sudden it's 8:00. The sun is down. Your Amtrak train leaves at 7:30. That's the last train that leaves Springfield. You have to get home tonight. You're going to miss your hearing. And again, this is design. This is all by design. There's a reason they put the Capitol in the middle of this giant state. There's a reason that they only meet, Tuesday to Thursday, 4 months out of the year. Like, never question like, wow, this doesn't seem like it's as efficient as it can be. That is by design.
Yeah. Well, I think we devoted a good time to advocacy. I could always talk to you more, and we'll have you definitely on again in the future. But out of respect for your time, we'll wrap up with maybe a little discussion about Cannabis Research Institute. I don't have many thoughts to share on this because it's early into the process, but I thought perhaps it would be cool to tell people at least like how it came to my attention and what I've experienced so far. So just briefly, like I got an email saying like, hey, we thought you might be interested from the Cannabis Research Institute at the University of Illinois in Chicago. Like, hey, we thought you might be interested in coming to these listening sessions. And I went to them and they gathered feedback from us. We got into working groups. And today we reviewed that, or the other day, I should say, we reviewed that feedback. And I guess we're going to be hearing back from them on what they decide. I feel like that was a pretty high level overview, but did you want to color in any details and just maybe expound upon some of the things you thought were notable about this endeavor by CRI?
No, I think I think, I'm hopeful. We have been invited to stuff like this before and nothing came of it. So I'm very hopeful because they took a lot of the information that we did give them and they brought it back. We can actually literally see some of the stuff like I said was on that board. Things of that nature. They took a lot of thoughts and ideas and combined them and they're whittling them down, which I think the process is going well right now. But like I said, I remain optimistic that maybe this is the right group to do this research.
Yeah. Peter, you got any thoughts on the process so far or any observations?
Yeah, I think it's a definitely a significant undertaking. They're trying to, essentially kind of build like a very strategic kind of research plan for the state of Illinois, which it's a lot. And so we're grateful that we've been a part of the table. Kind of to tie it back to the last topic, just like, being at the table, who gets to be at the table. I think it's really important that groups like the coalition are a part of it. We had a bunch of staff members there yesterday. Cole, it's important that you're a part of it. All of our medical advocates, Maureen Cern specifically, really grateful that she was on there. Because we have to have more voices at these tables. It cannot just be business owners. It cannot just be the people representing the industry. It has to be all stakeholders because They're talking about a lot of different things, trying to study and achieve some very lofty goals that affect a lot of different people. Those individuals have to be at the table and be a part of these conversations. And so we're grateful that they gave us a platform and included us, and we look forward to more conversations and helping them achieve our shared goals. Because if they can pull this off, then we will all be in a better position as a state. So we're excited to see where we can take this.
Yeah, I think you both said it really well, and I'm just curious to see the outcome. Like you said, it was nice to what I thought was interesting. I happened to be in your working session, Peter, so it was nice that they displayed the board for us, which included our feedback from the last session, and then they also gave us an opportunity to be like I don't know if I would say clarify, but add additional details or expound upon what we meant. And I really appreciated that opportunity because it just showed that, at least to me so far, that they do plan on collecting, complete data, all of our feedback. And so, like I say, it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. And I'm optimistic so far because of the work they've done, that this will, I just want some data to point to, really. They talked about a dashboard and stuff, and I just thought that was a great idea. It could help so many people in so many different ways, from the advocacy standpoint, from the research standpoint, harm prevention. There are so many different angles with the data that they're gathering. And I think there's a lot of potential here. So I'm really hopeful that they come through, but we'll see. I thought it was important to talk about, though, because, it's an interesting development, and let's hope it pans out. So I want to thank you both again for your time. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we go? Or
No, I'm very thankful that you took the time to listen. And I always look forward to working with you, Cole, over the years. You've always been a straight shooter, so come back anytime you want.
Appreciate that, Doug. And thank you, Peter, both for what you do. And I'll just say it again. I'll have it in the show notes, cannabisequityil.org. Get involved. Those policy meetings are on Zoom. And they're pretty easy to join. And if you can't join, Peter does a really good job of sending the notes out after the fact. So you can still get an idea of what's being discussed amongst advocates, so definitely check that out. Peter, I wanted to give you space before we close. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, join the policy meetings every other Monday. The next one will be Monday, December 1st. We'll be talking about what's going to happen next year. And yeah, again, get involved. It is never too late to get involved, get supporting with the coalition. We're getting, next year is the year to achieve a lot. Again, hemp is out of the way. So it's our time to finally get something done. And if you want to help us, where you can sign up. But most importantly, if you have a couple dollars to donate this holiday season, please do consider donating to the coalition. givebutter.com/CEIC. Help us continue to do the work. Again, like we said, going to Springfield is not an easy thing. So help fuel us so we can continue to make that trip and hopefully win some real policy wins.
Yeah, I'll just briefly reiterate that. givebutter.com/CEIC. It'll be in the show notes. And folks like Peter and Doug are not paid to go there. It's like, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like kind of grassroots supported, crowdfunded, if you will. These other lobbyists and advocates, if you want to call them, whatever they want to call themselves, in Springfield, like you said, are paid money and often even have houses there, and you guys have to take time out of your days and travel. And so please, folks, consider supporting, once again, givebutter.com/CEIC, or just, connect with them at cannabisequityil.org. Well, Doug, Peter, thanks again. And I think that's a good note to end on. So
thank you.
Thanks, Cole.
Take care, everybody.